A Build Hatch developed production.
On today's show of Build Hatch, I was fortunate enough to speak to Grahame Chevalley from the Hunter Valley. Grahame is a major contributor to the Hunter Valley's economy, being a part owner of the GWH Group. During Grahame's 30 plus years in the construction industry, Grahame understands both the contractors and owners' perspectives. Through this experience, Grahame talks about empowering his people and getting the basics right. I really enjoyed sitting down and listening to a well-grounded, good old-fashioned hard worker from the country and hearing his philosophy of keeping his eyes open for what works and what doesn't work, and simply having a vision for the end product in mind. I can't wait to share his insights with you. Grahame Chevalley, welcome to Build Hatch.
Thank you very much.
All right, Grahame, thanks for coming onto the show. Before we get to know a bit more about some of the projects that you've worked on or a bit about your company, can you first tell our listeners whereabouts did you grow up?
Okay, I grew up on the North Coast of New South Wales. I have a sort of a bit of a different background. I grew up on a cattle station where my dad was a stockman, and we lived there for a number of years. Obviously, the rural industry in those days was pretty tough, and my father used to work on the cattle station. He had his own property, and he needed to supplement that income, and we lived on that cattle station. So, grew up in the bush.
So a hard-working family?
Oh, very much so. His weekdays and our weekdays were spent working on the cattle station, and the weekends were primarily spent on our own property as well. So, enjoyed that aspect. Back in those days, he was a cattleman basically. Would be working daylight to dark. And mostly on a horse. Most of his time would have been spent on a horse.
Really?
Mm. So, and then I had that love of the cattle work, and I still to this day have my own property at Gresford. That's where the love of the farming comes from.
Yeah, okay, interesting. And so I guess worked on the farm up until you were a teenager, and then so why building? How did you get into building?
Well, I didn't. I actually decided farming was going to be my life, and I left the North Coast and headed to the Hunter Valley and went to Turnkey Ag College, just outside of Newcastle, and I was there for 2 years. And after that, I actually got a job here locally working on a farm for a couple of years, another property. And it was at that stage that I was sort of worked out that one of the things I'd learned at Ag College was ag economics, and it didn't take me long to work out there wasn't much future in working for somebody else on the land, because my ultimate goal really was to have my own property. And working for wages, pretty low wages, I wasn't going to achieve that goal. So I looked at an opportunity. I worked around for a couple of builders, and then settled down with one builder, a local builder, not far from where I lived. And he obviously gave me an opportunity, and he was very much a hands-on builder and a mum and dad operation, and I learned a lot from him. So, and obviously building, I was attracted to building because it's not unlike in a lot of ways like farming. It's kind of, it's hard work, it's long days, it's, I enjoy building, I enjoy farming, but I think building is not dissimilar in a lot of ways.
So on the tools?
On the tools, a lot on the tools, but I actually never did my trade as such, and in fact, the guy that I worked for who had, I think he'd had a series of apprentices over the years, and he actually said I was the best apprentice he ever had, who was never actually an apprentice. So I learned so much from him, because he was a guy that he'd throw me straight in the deep end. I basically were able to frame out a house from start to finish within probably 12 or 18 months, just because he was he gave me the opportunities.
So was he a bit of a mentor back then for you?
Oh yes, obviously, yeah. No, definitely was. And probably that he gave me a great opportunity, and I think I've continued that through people that work around me and for me today.
Yeah,
Same
okay.
thing, I learned a lot from that. Give them an opportunity, and the rest is up to them.
And what sort of construction was it?
All residential.
All residential?
Yeah. New houses, new homes, and extensions and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
a little bit of commercial stuff, but mainly residential.
Yeah, right. And so you did that for a couple of years?
Yes.
And then at some point made a decision that you could do this yourself or go out on your own, or another opportunity?
Yeah, well, what I did was I worked for him for probably 2 or 3 years, probably 3 years. I went out and started to do a bit of work on my own, just general sort of carpentry and sort of building work. And then I had an opportunity to work in Newcastle with one of the major Newcastle commercial builders, and I worked there for a couple of years with them, and I worked my way up from basically being on the tools up to being a site supervisor and project manager, and that's really where it started, that then the opportunity was there to maybe go out and do something on my own. I had an opportunity to do that, and I took it and started that in about 1991. I formed my own company, but primarily at that stage, and I was doing commercial and industrial buildings.
Yeah, okay. So what was that like at the time? You know, you're working full time for somebody else, you're contemplating the move. You know, how long did you think about that for?
Look, I was always somebody that was prepared to have a bit of a go. It didn't daunt me, and I suppose I was young. I think I was only around about 26, 27 at that stage, and I wasn't, probably young and, gung-ho, ready to go. And I really didn't have a second thought about it, to be honest. By that stage, I had 4 children. So, and not that I was looking for their future. I don't think it was and primarily it was never. I never got in it to make money more so than to just take the opportunity and give that opportunity every shot that I could to achieve what my potential was, I suppose.
But still, even with 4 kids and working, to make that plunge, that's there's an element of risk in that too, and takes a lot of courage to do that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But I'm a risk taker. I think in a positive type of way,
a calculated
way, yes. And I mean, really, the rest that I've done in my life, business life, there's always risks associated with it. And yes, it's about calculating. And the opportunity that I had, I summed that up pretty quickly, and I thought, no, this is a good opportunity. So, life is so much about opportunities.
So you waited for the right time, calculated the risk, and then took the plunge.
Yeah, I think the opportunity came along, and I weighed it up, and let's give it a go.
So did you have? That's remarkable. Did you have architects or opportunity? You had an existing network to be able to support that calculated risk?
Yeah. Well, what the opportunity was, I was an opportunity to join forces with my now business partner Hilton Grahame, who is a well-known Hunter developer. And at that stage, Hilton was mostly doing property development. What was property development? He still had his landscaping business, but there was an opportunity there. He was getting lots of inquiries for land and building packages in the industrial market. He obviously he only had the land, and he needed somebody to come along and provide the building package as well. And I'd done some work for him when I was working for the previous company, and he came along to me and said, "Look, what about this? I've got the land. You can build the buildings. Why don't we just join forces?" And which is what we did.
So you effectively complemented each other.
That's correct. And I think then, you're right in that I had the contacts with already in the Newcastle area, subcontractors, suppliers, architects, engineers. So I tapped into that, and even some of my early employees were people that I'd worked with previously that I knew when I worked in construction in Newcastle.
So you had that network, and it's so important, isn't it, that you don't know what the future brings. So it's so important to, I guess, have a great network around you, because you never know down the track. You could be, working for yourself or, employing those guys directly. So.
And that's a risk mitigation, because that's part of the calculation. Is that if you're working with people that I think it makes it you're mitigating the risk of it going wrong. Then they know you know them. I think it's important to bring them along on the journey, and that's something we've continued to do. There's some of those people that I worked with back in those days are still working for me now, so including subcontractors. So they've been it's been a long journey, but they're people you can trust. They know how you work, you know how they work. So it's really important.
And that's a credit to you, I guess, to have that network of people that still help you succeed these days. That's just a critical ingredient of success, isn't it? And just shows what sort of business you have and the networks that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the company that I'd worked for in Newcastle previous to this opportunity, I probably learnt more about how not to run a company than how to run a company. And they were the hard-nosed building tenderers that would get 10 prices from a subcontractor. They'd take the cheapest and then watch him go broke on the job. And there was just no teamwork involved, and they just burn them out.
Just cutthroat, no building
relationships. And look, and obviously, and they not only with their suppliers and their subcontractors, they didn't even have relationships with their customers. and they would burn them out as well. And just the variation book, we still to this day do not have a variation book. We've never had a variation book and we've built really ongoing relationships with not only our suppliers, our subcontractors, but our clients, our customers as well. So that's, as I said, if I learned anything, it was how not to run a business. So I made sure that when we took that forward into these businesses, even up until this day, it's very much relationship built.
Wow, that's incredible. So I guess to relate it back to growing up, you grew up on a farm, so there's already that hard-working mentality, and then you've then gone on, you've learnt from a good mentor, you've then applied that to your business relationships and the people that you work with, so that, you know, at some point, maybe not knowing at the time, but you may be working for yourself. So that's an amazing feat. Who inspired you back then?
I don't think any one person inspired me. I've had multiple people that have inspired me. I speak about Hilton and the opportunities, and obviously from a building development, he'd done a lot of building development before we joined forces. I learned a lot from him, and along the way, I've just the opportunities, the people that I've seen, the ability to be able to work out what is a good idea and what is a bad idea. I'm a great plagiariser. I often say that I don't think I've had an original idea in my life. I've stolen every one of them from somebody else. But in saying that, I think the ability to be able to identify something that won't work or doesn't work, or a system that doesn't work, or you watch some, a building company that you go, no, I don't think that's not the way I want to be. So I think you can just about be inspired by everybody. I'm inspired by my labourers that work for me, some of their work ethic and their, the ability to get out of bed and go to work every day and what they're doing for their family, with architects and consultants, and just learning from them. My business partners in my other businesses, they've all come with really high skill sets, and I've enjoyed learning from them. Yeah, all of them. As I say, there's some bad experiences, you leave them behind, but the people that surround us at the moment, I get a lot of satisfaction and inspiration from them.
And that comes back to what we keep talking about, the theme of this, which is relationships and relationship building. Absolutely.
And we live in Newcastle, which is a big country town, and it's not only we know each other, subcontractors, suppliers, our customers, our clients, they all know each other. We know them, they know us, and we make sure that we, as like in a country town, we got each other's back and we look after each other.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're part of the GWH Group. How do you differentiate yourself from competitors? We're
quite a diverse company in that we do commercial, industrial. We also do multi-storey residential, which is probably the obvious bit of what we're doing around Newcastle at the moment. But we have a background really in commercial and industrial. We also in that large industrial or less, and the large commercial and the large residential, we're a local as well. Most of our competitors, particularly in the high-rise residential, are people from out of Newcastle. So that makes us different. But I think the most unique part of it is the integrated businesses that we have. Whereas we have our own design team, we have our own marketing team. We have our own precast business, we have our own ready-mix concrete business, we have our own window business, we have our own structural steel business. So we bring those things all together.
So you can package it all up into a full suite of services, basically.
Yeah, correct. We can basically get a building, even a multi-storey high-rise, almost to lock up with our own internal integrated companies. And look, it's and that's about the control of the quality and the delivery, the service, and the timing is why we do it. There's no other reason than that. It's really about just taking control of those inputs and putting it all together, particularly from a quality perspective.
Absolutely. I've got to hand it to you. I mean, to have a company like that can having one trade is difficult enough. So to have a full suite of packages that you're able to provide in a turnkey service is just incredible.
And I think also that it's difficult, like the concept of it may be a little daunting to manage, but to the thought of it, but actually by the coordination and the integration, it actually flows a lot smoother than what you would normally be doing by sourcing all of those trades and then trying to put them all together and to integrate them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I guess from an outside looking in, it's more because you have that internal relationship, and that internal family of service providers, that actually mitigates that reliance on external third parties, through time and ballooning costs, and you're able to control the more pieces of the puzzle, so to speak.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's the ability to be able to exert that control on timing, but not only timing, it's the quality as well. And then I think the other thing that we certainly do is that we push a continuity of design. So if we see a design that worked well on one building, we make sure that we use it again on the next. So our concrete panels integrate with our glass panelling systems, and which integrate with our concrete systems, which integrate with our steel systems. So we have quite that integration is more than just the supply and the delivery. It's also about, and the quality, it's also about just if we've got a system that works, we stick with it.
Yeah, interesting. All right, so obviously having a large family of companies in one big company, what sort of reporting systems do you have in place? There'd be a lot of people listening to this who, I'm a big believer in a lot of the dispute work that I'm involved in. I see lack of reporting and lack of monitoring things. So even smaller companies should be looking at where they've been, where they are now, where they're going in future. So what sort of reporting systems, particularly with a company your size, do you have in place to be able to reflect on the business?
Yeah, each of the businesses they report monthly at board level. They meet monthly at a management level. So in the GWH, they have their project status reports that each of the project managers come in and report on to the construction manager. And in that, it's not only the financial performance, it's the health and safety, it's any HR issues, planning, marketing, those sorts of things. So all of those report monthly. The date of that monthly meeting is set for the next 12 months. So there's a discipline where they have to be prepared, they have to report, they own that report. And then generally the week after, which is by about mid-month, our financials for the previous month are being formulated, are ready to go out. Probably the week after that, we meet at a board level, and at that board level, the heads of each of the departments report to the board, and it's a very structured reporting system. There's an agenda, there's the financial reporting, but it's this health and safety, and there's any of the HR issues, the marketing team report, the development team report, the construction team report. But yes, they're all reporting. I suppose the one thing I suppose time has taught me is that I probably have made the mistake over the years of spending too much on some of the computerised reporting programs or some of the financial accounting systems. We tend to keep it fairly simple now. A lot of our businesses are just using MyOb, and we've gone away from some of the very expensive tailor-made construction programs. We've gone to some of the more off the shelf.
So you've basically gone back to basics.
We've gone back to basics.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple because they haven't the ability then to tailor it for what we want, and because we've now got this experience about what we should be reporting and what you shouldn't be reporting. And
what works, what doesn't work.
What doesn't work. And I think if you've got a computer programmer telling you what the report should look like, you probably got it wrong. So we have a very standardised reporting system it's worked. We repeat it. It provides the information that we want. It's recorded. So I think that's one of the bits of advice I could. Don't have to lash out and get a flash, particularly financial reporting program. A lot of the stuff is off the shelf available, and it does just as good a job.
Wow, that's really interesting. What about, you're obviously a very busy man, Grahame, so how do you, out of curiosity, do you get on a site much?
Look, it's not as much as I'd like because obviously we have multiple sites. Unfortunately, what happens is generally the bit of the banter around the sites. If they see me on site, something's wrong. So they don't like to see me very much. So and that's the same with all of the businesses. Look, I'm very much, my management style is very much about empowering the managers. I'm not a hands-on day-to-day. I try to make sure I've got a really good team around me, and I allow them to do what they've been employed to do.
Empowering them, giving them the tools to be able to move forward.
And I think one of the great tools that I can give them is the flexibility and their ownership and there's that this is your site. We've got some constraints about how it should be run and about how safe, particularly around safety and quality. But other than that, they know what they have to achieve. I allow them to do that by their own mechanism, basically their own devices, because we're all different. And we have a broad church. Each of the project managers particularly have different styles, but they generally achieve the same outcome, but they achieve it differently. But I think if you want them to rise to the top, as we do, this is what we do with our any of their people that are working for me at the moment. We want them to rise to the top, and we just empower them to, and don't over-manage them or micromanage them at all.
I think the key ingredient there that you have is trust and rapport and having that relationship already established. I could tell when I walked in here today that you have that trust. It must feel very empowering working for you and your team to know that you have their backs. You've empowered them to go manage the project. You've stripped everything back to basics, so there's basically no bullshit, so to speak, and you're able to just get on with the job, and that must feel amazing to be able to see that.
I sleep exceptionally well of night. I make sure that our accounting system's up to the scratch, and every bit of tax that we have to pay, we pay. There's no looking over your shoulder to see, if the tax man's coming. Work health and safety. I don't think there'd be a building company in Newcastle. In fact, GWH has won state awards for some of their initiatives in work health and safety. The quality of the people that we've got working for us allows me to, allows them to do what they need to do. The mutual trust that's there, they go and do their thing. I also know if they've got a problem, they'll jump on the phone and not be afraid to ask for a little bit of support. And that's generally my role. I'm really just, I'm ready to answer the phone to give them that bit of support, but also empower them to, to develop and, to really prosper. I think that the thing that gives me the greatest pride is really been watching, just before Christmas this year, we met with, we had a lunch with 4 of our employees that have been with us for over 20 years. So, and a couple of those employees now are managing large multi-story projects, multi-million-dollar projects, and they started with me as apprentices. So to watch that happen now is that's one of the greatest sense of pride I get out of what I'm.
Oh, I bet it is, and particularly in 2020 now. So long-term employee could be 12 months or 2 years these days.
Oh yes, no, it's definitely right. Yeah, and look, and we have that really. We have quite a good balance of we have the employees that came with us as apprentices, as trade apprentices, that then took on supervision jobs, not dissimilar to how I worked. And then they've moved up now into senior management roles. But I also have highly educated, double degree honours graduates working for us as well. And what I really do like is the mutual respect they each have for each other, and how they bounce off each other. Because I'm sure that we obviously, with those guys that started with me as apprentices that have got a really strong trades practical experience, we tend to put a couple of young cadets out of uni with them, and they actually work off each other, or they support each other. And the same as with with some of the guys that the cadets, with the senior supervisors, we put that mix of that trade experience, that practical experience, and that academic experience, and it comes together. And I think that makes the difference as well.
Sounds like it. I mean, that's I guess collaborating and working as a team. Having that mixed theory approach, whether you've come out of university and then you have these apprentices or the more practical people that think more practically, and combining the two type of heads to achieve a positive outcome.
And the really valuable people for your company are the ones that somewhere meet in the middle. That's got the balance of the really highly educated and the really practical as well. That's super important.
That must be an amazing feeling to see that from your perspective. I mean, how does it feel when it all comes together and you finish a project on time and within budget? These are very important milestones. So how does it feel when you're able to achieve that?
I think I just get more satisfaction out of every day, just coming to work and working with the team and watching the team progress. I mean, I've got this sort of situation whereby that some people say to me, often ask me, what is it, when the job's finished, it must be good to sit back and look at it and watch how it, how it completed. But I've got one of those brains that I can actually look at a plan and I know exactly what it's going to look like when it's finished. So I don't sort of get that satisfaction out of looking at the end product because I've already visualised it, and I think that's and I've already visualised before I start all the stages and how it's going to finish. But definitely still to drive around and look at what we've done has been is wonderful. But it's really the people and that the customers and our employees that I probably get the most satisfaction out of, particularly those long-term ones that have been with us. I get that. Probably the greatest enjoyment I get is going and having a barbecue with our precast guys, which is this Friday. Sitting down, having a chat to them, talking to them. I mean, I used to know every one of my employees by first name, but unfortunately now when you have 350 and it becomes a bit difficult. Oh,
absolutely. All right, so we've heard a lot about your, business life. What gets you up every day, every morning? What gets you up?
Well, I have 2 younger children, so they're usually up nice and early. Look,
they help.
That's it. I don't think I'm going to. I know that I'll never retire. I actually enjoy getting out of bed and going to work and going to life. I don't know if it's even going to work. It's just going to life. I just enjoy life. Even dropping the kids off at school. I tend most mornings to go to the gym for an hour or so.
Okay.
So I drop the kids off at school, go to the gym. I think that's really important, just to stay. That extra little level of physical activity. I used to get that when I was on the tools. And as soon as you get off the tools, I noticed that, I was probably, my fitness was going backwards. I hate going to the gym, love leaving it. I love that feeling. I love that feeling of that, the endorphins when they cut in, but I enjoy that. But then coming to work, enjoy that. Enjoy going home to the family as well. But and obviously I go home, I live on a rural property, so that's always nice to drive home to that of an afternoon. So that's really enjoyable.
So I'm assuming that's how you achieve work-home life balance, is that outlet with the rural property, the farm, the fresh air. You've had a big day, you get to go home and it's a bit of an outlet for you. Yeah,
and I think I've always had the ability to be able to switch off as well. I tend not to take work home with me. If I've had a tough day at work, I tend to actually I've got a button somewhere mentally that I can just switch off from that and go back and don't take those problems home to the family. And I think living on a rural property helps that as well, just going for a drive around the cattle and watching what's going on. That's also important to recharge the batteries.
Look, that's definitely one thing I'm fascinated by, is that ability to be able to switch off. So I guess people who are listening to this that may be involved in the building industry, how do you do that if you have some sort of issue that's happening at work, or there's some other problem that you're dealing with? How do you do that? How do you turn that button off, or hit the pause button or the switch button, like you said, to be able to just have a bit of a break from that?
I think it's actually my rural upbringing that adds to that or assists me with that, because the thing about living on the land, you have control of some things, but there's so much you don't have control of, like the weather, droughts, floods, bushfires, all of those things, animal health, those things you can do some things about. But I think you learn from a very early age growing up on the land, there's things you can control, there's things you can't control. Don't worry about the things you can't. Look after the things that you can. And I think it's the same in business life as well.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do. And it's interesting you say that, because I guess for the non-farmers, there's this image of a farmer where life on the land doesn't finish. There's no end date. So, it's fascinating to hear that, from my perspective anyway, that you can do that quite well.
Yeah, I think so. And I think I think that if you can't do that living on the land, it probably would drive you pretty batty pretty quickly, I think, because it's just so much out of your control that happens with life on the land. So you learn very early that control the things you can, and there's other things you can't control. You're just going to have to do the best you can whilst they're happening, and know that it'll change as well.
Things will get better.
Things will get better. That optimism.
So I guess interesting reflection now. So how do you define success now that you've experienced these amazing feats? How do you now define success these days compared to back then when you took that plunge to go out on your own?
I don't sort of see myself as being any more successful or less successful. I suppose it was the inspiration for me was never to achieve success. It's just something that's come along the way. So I think that as well. I think that if you set out to achieve this successful life, or this life of success and the trappings that it brings, I think you'll probably get distracted. So no, I don't think I actually, and I suppose I never really see myself as successful, so it doesn't really enter into the equation. I think, look, success is having a happy, well-balanced, healthy family. That's success for me.
Oh, totally. And I mean, what managed to do is, I think, put systems in place, the right people in place, and then once you've done that, you've been able to have the confidence, not to sit back, but actually sleep at night, go to bed at night knowing you've put the right people in the right roles, you've got the systems in place, everything else will take care of itself.
That's right. And I think that's just important. But it's also the personality. I think it is my personality. I probably would have been living on the land if I was doing that, because that's if I wasn't doing this, what would I be doing? I would have been living on the land, probably running a property somewhere. So they're not dissimilar attributes at all.
I think it's the work ethic too, to be fair to you, the work ethic of that. If you weren't working hard in your business, then you're working equally as hard on the land as well. So.
Yes. No. Look, I certainly now, if I have somebody comes along to me with a resume, and it shows that they grew up on the land, and I've got 20 other applications all equally qualified, I know which one will go to the top of the pile.
All right, so we here at Build Hatch, we're absolutely big believers in you don't make mistakes, only lessons. If you learn from them. So if you could pick one lesson to date in your business, what's the best lesson that you've learned along the way so far?
Oh, look, I think it's just a continuation of those lessons that I learnt from growing up. That work ethic of working on the land, the resilience that you develop. You've got to be resilient, and I think in the building industry you need to be resilient, because there'll be things almost daily that'll be sent to try you, things outside of your control sometimes, and again that's that resilience. But we went through the GFC as a property developer. I would say most of our contemporaries basically, if they didn't go to the wall, they probably went very close to the wall. But I think it also reinforced we were quite diversified in that we had diversification within our businesses. We weren't just a property developer, we had these other diversified businesses as well. Along the way, we had quite a good property portfolio that underpinned us, so when things got a bit tough financially, we always had them as backup. So that's a great lesson that I took out of that. That's something I think we need to go into the future with. With GWH at the moment, we're quite a diversified business in that we don't just do residential. We do residential, commercial, industrial, and we do mostly our own property development work, but we do some contract work. But I think that diversification of any business is important, is that it's not just related to the building industry. It's probably any industry that you can weather the storm, because it tends to be, if there's a crisis within like a financial crisis, it tends to get, it might just have one particular area that it's focused on, like it was with the GFC, which was around credit ability to be able to get it. So
yeah, okay. And so what's your vision moving forward with the business, particularly with GWH?
Oh, look, I think it's like all of the businesses. I think you can get too big, and you just got to be able to maintain that sweet spot about large enough to have those economies of scale, but also for me is that it's large enough that I can actually have the managers in place that take away from some of that day-to-day stuff for me. But I think you've got to be careful that you don't become too large, and the distance between the director's board, the board level, and the project managers becomes too great, and you need to be able to maintain that. I suppose overview without being over the top, but just being able to maintain a good oversight on what's going on. You don't lose that. We generally now don't do any work outside of Newcastle much. We have done work Sydney, regional regional areas as well, but Newcastle is our hometown. It's close. It's easy to keep control of, and look, the business model is working well.
And so you obviously have a lot of young people coming through in your business as well. What from looking back now, what would you say to a young person coming through who, you know, a younger version of yourself who's thinking about making that plunge, who's, you know, thinking about going out on their own and becoming, you know, aiming high like you did back then? So what would you say to a young person?
Well, the first thing, they're going to be a millennial, and they're probably not going to stick in the same place for very long.
Yeah.
The first bit of advice is stick with something for a while.
Persist.
Yeah, persist. Yeah, ride the highs and the lows.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
That's it, and that's the first bit of advice I would give them. But look, honestly, it's about opportunity. I think that what I've over my years have seen, I think we all get opportunities. Some choose to take it, some don't, and that's really the ability to be able to sum up fairly quickly. This is an opportunity, and I should take it. And there are people that don't want to progress, or they're happy just doing, you know, going to work, going home. It's not for everyone, but to progress yourself and to become more successful, it's about opportunity and taking the opportunities when they arise.
And did you have a mentor, or do you have one at the moment? Do you do any mentoring yourself?
Look, I think that all of my employees, and particularly my senior employees, to an extent, are mentors of mine, and I hope that I'm mentors of those. And my business partners, I think it's a very similar situation. I mean, I'm a great believer in definitely of not being the most intelligent person in the room. That surround yourself with eagles, and that's a super critical part of what you need to do to really achieve success. I think if you think you're the smartest guy in your organisation, you've got the wrong people working for you.
So that's obviously amazing to be able to think like that. What about when you're making big decisions? Who do you speak to, or what's the process involved when you are thinking about making big decisions?
Look, I'm surrounded by lots of really good people, and I certainly get all their advice. I listen to them. I take it on board. But at the end of the day, I basically have to pull the trigger. I'm the one that's going to make the decisions often, for those decisions that require, or where I need to make the decision. I definitely listen, take it on board, but I think it's a super critical thing that you're able to cut out the negativity, probably cut out the gung-ho over positivity, and somewhere in the middle go, yep, this is a good deal, let's do it.
For sure. And I think for our listeners, I mean, I guess if you're in the other realm of being a builder where you traditionally, you may have a couple of chippies or carpenters that work for you, the rest of their day-to-day life is basically quite fragmented, you know, relying on that third party, the subcontractors. So I think that's important that to bring back, that you can surround yourself. They don't have to be within your business. You can still have people that you trust to throw some ideas up against outside of your business, and have a healthy conversation with those people and ask them what their honest opinion is.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go back to what I said before. I'm a plagiarizer. I've never had an original idea in my life. I mean, I take those ideas from the people around me, and very broadly as well. I find it very interesting to listen to people, what they have to say, their experiences and their expertise is an amazing wealth of knowledge out there. And I just got to as they say, just open your ears.
All right, Grahame. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you sit down and give up your valuable time to come on to Build Hatch. It's been truly inspiring, and employing over 300 people, that's quite a feat. So we definitely look forward to hearing what GWH is bringing online in the future.
Thank you, Aaron. It's been a pleasure.
Well, that was Grahame Chevalley from GWH Group. What I have to tell you that you didn't hear on air is that Grahame is a very modest person who does a lot for his local community. He spends a lot of time and effort with the RFS, and he's had an extremely busy summer fighting fires in the worst fire season in Australia's history. So I want to thank him for giving up his time, particularly during that. And this is a guy who, like a lot of volunteers, he doesn't seek recognition for it. He simply just does it because he wants to give back, and he doesn't self-promote that fact. So that's very inspiring. So that's it for this week on Build Hatch. I have some exciting guests coming up, and I can't wait to hit the road and share some more of the real stories and the real people behind the pictures. I hope you enjoyed this week's show, and If you'd like to reach out to me or be a guest on the show, please do so via our Instagram or website. And please don't forget to also rate our show. Thanks for listening.
You have experienced a Build Hatch Developed production.